You are an entrepreneur, a business mogul, a future tycoon, and you've been looking for a podcast that knows and talks business like no other podcast in the world. This is the Biz Beatdown Podcast. If you're passionate about business or itching to start your own venture, or maybe you're already knee-deep in the exhilarating chaos of running your own show, we're dishing out the secrets, strategies, and the street smarts to help you not just survive, but thrive in the wild world of business. And now your hosts, Vincent Penix and Patrick Barbour.
All right, guys, welcome to a very special edition of the Biz Beatdown Podcast. We are finally in person today. So we have 5 recruiting agency owners, and we are going to be covering all the topics that you want to hear about and maybe a little bit more. So why don't we go around the table? We'll have everybody introduce themselves. Jace, why don't we start with you?
Yeah. Hey, everybody. My name is Jace Gray. I run a sales recruiting company called Jace Gray Consulting and Recruiting. We've been doing it for about 3 years now, placed over 800 leaders, and we're really excited to see what the next years have unfold for us, but just excited to be part of here. And thank you for inviting us, Vincent.
Awesome.
My name is Gonzalo Guillen. I own a company called HR Exchange. We specialize in placing accounting and finance professionals. We mainly work with ultra high net worth individuals, private equity and family office, and specifically real estate investment trusts. So companies that do development, construction, and flip to asset management. We're going on our 6th year. We have 5 employees and we're counting. So, and thank you for inviting me as well.
Of course. Yeah, and my name is Vincent Penix. I own Interview Staffing, and we mostly focus on the manufacturing industry. We also do construction and insurance as well. So,
I'm Patrick Barbour, owner and CEO of Search Now, a search firm that specializes in the energy industry and industrial construction. Also founder of a group called Millionaire Recruiter Club, where we help folks start and launch, scale their own recruiting agencies. So happy to be here. It's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, my name is Chris Holtzhauer. I run a boutique recruitment firm, recruiting attorneys for the biggest law firms throughout the country, and all the way down to boutique firms that are prestigious and are top tier. And I'm based here in Miami, Florida, but recruit nationwide. Awesome.
All right, well, let's go ahead and we're just going to flow right into questions, guys.
Let's do it.
I think I'll probably start with Chris, but if anybody else wants to jump in, we'll just go ahead and go from there. Sound good? Okay, so Chris, for you, what do you feel like is the biggest hurdle that you feel like a recruiting agency has to overcome when trying to close a potential client? And why do you think this exists? And what do you guys do to overcome this?
All right, so there's a few things. Number one, I think it starts off with you got to have conviction. You have to have confidence when you're talking to these, in my case, firms or employers, right? So your tonality and how you come across, I think, is number one. You got to believe in what you're doing, and that comes from success. All right. After that, I think because the challenge is trust at the end of the day, right? If these firms or these companies knew for a fact that you were the guy that was going to fill their position, with the right person that was not going to waste their time, you would be hired, period. If their brother, mother, or whoever that they knew is closest to them, hit them up with a pitch, they trust that person, they're going to go with them. So that's number 2. But as far as strategy goes, for me, what I use and what works very, very well is old school marketing candidates. So I find a candidate that I'm excited about, somebody that I can represent. Mm-hmm. And that's my end, because now I don't have to convince you that I can do it. I already fucking did it. I got you exactly who it is that you've been looking for. Yeah. Here's this person. And I give them, an overview of their background and all the highlights, of course. And it's an end. So I kill 2 birds with one stone. I got a new client for life, right? If you do right by them. And I got a candidate who's now getting ready to be set up on an interview, right? And that's how I go about it.
Do you intentionally find the candidates first a lot of times so you can present them, or is this kind of just something that comes about and then you go after the clients?
It depends, right? So many cases it's organic. If I'm recruiting for a position, I talk to a candidate, and if what I have in mind for them turns out not to be the fit, because I don't know what they're looking for when I make that cold call. And that's the point of that first conversation, is to find out their interest, right? So I may learn that throughout a call that, hey, this is probably not for you, but you know what? I might have something else that is, and then I'll hit them with that. On the flip side, I always say, or at least one of my principles is, if I don't have an exciting position to discuss with a candidate something that I'm naturally enthusiastic about, which I think is key, then I need to find a candidate that I'm enthusiastic about and I need to flip it, right?
Yeah.
So it depends on where I'm at. If I don't have anything exciting, then I'm more intentional about finding that person. Or if I'm working on something specifically, it'll just kind of happen organically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Do
Awesome.
you find that approach also tends to open some other doors for you? Maybe they're not interested in that candidate, but perhaps they have something else that might be related where. Yeah. I got an agreement in place now.
Okay. So I have access to any position that you guys have that you're willing to use a recruiter for. You know what I mean? So yeah, sometimes they're not interested in the candidate, you come to find out, Great candidate, hit all the marks, but attorney recruitment is very complex. There are things that can get in the way that can kill a deal, like conflicts, right? So maybe they're at a firm where they do where there may be a lot of conflicts potentially, so they may not have to pass on a good candidate. But yeah, you still have that relationship in place now, and you can present other candidates to them down the line whenever they need your help,
That's interesting. I mean, I totally agree with, your comment as far as, the trust factor and that kind of being one of the biggest hurdles. I would say that's, recruitment agency owners, we all have kind of a number of different things that we're battling against. I think trust is definitely one of the biggest ones in an NPC. It really solves a lot of that. Yep. For me, what I really struggle, because when we do, candidly, in my business, when we do NPCs, usually it does come about organically, right? It's not something that we're strategically chasing and trying to build a pipeline of and this sort of thing. Is that kind of your approach? It just kind of organic and like you move with your actions and activity and what that yields you, whether it be an awesome candidate or a client? Absolutely. Or do you have a system in place where you're cultivating these NPCs?
Yeah, like I said, it's both, right? So it depends on where I'm at. If I filled, 2 positions where I say to myself, I have to fill these positions. So I'm getting tunnel vision right now. And that's all that I'm working on. By the time I'm done with those 2, I might not have anything else that's as exciting to work on. I still have other things that I can work on, but I might be searching for something else. At this point, yeah, like I'd probably be more inclined to try to find that person. But honestly, I'm always looking for that. I'm always looking for good people, at the end of the day. And people who may be unhappy in their position for very good reasons, and I can help them find something better. And that's kind of how I look at it in many cases. I put the candidate number one. I even tell my clients that. But by doing that, the client wins too. We all win. You know what I mean? But it starts with the candidate finding what it is that they are looking for as a next step for them. So yeah, it comes organically, to answer your question, And then I think the manner that you go about that, I've learned from other people that there's different ways of presenting an NPC. I know I do mine a little bit differently than some people do. So
you do it through cold calling, the old school way, right? Yeah, well, mainly rather than just sending out a cold email, right? I'm the same way.
Actually, no. So I do that with candidates, yes. But if it's a client, and I will if I have to, right? But for me, on the client side, email is number one. And then it's how you present that email. I'm not demanding that we get an agreement in place today before I show you what you want to know, right? So I can redact the resume, or I can, what we call a blind resume. I can do that first. Like I don't need to, I don't have roadblocks in front of me like some people do. If you work for an agency, you got to have that agreement first before you share a candidate.
Right. Yep.
I'm not saying I'm going to share the contact information of a candidate. Obviously, I'm not going to do that at that point, but I'll show them something that's redacted. And I position the message in a way that lets them know that, hey, I get their attention by letting them know I got the right person for you.
But then do you follow it up with a call? Because for instance, my background, we come from bigger agencies as well, and they always teach you to basically call the client, and the cadence of your voice will show the excitement of that candidate, and that transitions pretty well as well too.
Yes.
So do you do that as well?
Yeah, dude. If I can get the client on the phone,
that's the
I'm
best.
gonna do it every time. It builds a relationship. I can 100%. Learn a lot more in a phone call than I can in a very transactional email. There's no tonality that they can read off of me. Sometimes you need to say something and you don't want it to come across a certain way. Your voice is the only thing that right? Body language and your voice, tonality. Yeah, man.
Yeah. Is that how you guys do it too as well?
I mean, not really. One thing I wanted to ask you real quick, when you have that like NPC though, like how are you kind of collecting that data together to know like which companies to reach out to? Do you kind of like buy that data, or are you kind of on Google searching, finding these people? Like what do you do to, like,
so I'm lucky in that in my industry, there's a great resource that we use that scrapes all the data within law firms, attorney profiles. So I have access to basically every attorney in the market, right? And then on the job opening side too, they scrape that. So I have access to the entire public market. Any position that's publicly open, I have that. So it's just a matter of doing some due diligence. Again, starting with the candidate call. How did that go? What are you looking for? Maybe this is not right for you, but you should check this, and that out. And I'm looking for openings that have that criteria, and then I present them to my candidate.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, and to your question, I don't know if anybody else wants to answer that too. I know, Jason, I don't think you do like the NPC reverse.
You
thing.
don't do
so
the
what
NPC?
is your process like?
Yeah, it's a little bit more reverse. We don't necessarily lead with the MPC, but we kind of dangle that carrot as we do when it comes to the BD side of it. So for us, a lot of our candidates, they come in through search engine optimization. So like to your guys' point, we build the pipeline because we know the faster we can build the pipeline, the faster we could get paid on placements. So it's a little bit different, but we do get thousands of people visiting our website every single month, and it works that way for us very well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we do a lot of times is I know that we'll like positions that we've successfully placed in the past, we just kind of try to pull that data together of like other companies that are hiring for the same thing. And then we're reaching out and be like, hey, we have people in our database, but also we can kind of adjust to what you're looking for. We do have success with these positions.
Do your clients have ongoing roles that you can tap into just about throughout the entire year, or is it just very here and there?
Yeah, for us, I mean, because we're in the manufacturing industry, the cool thing is like, once you place like an engineer or something like that, sometimes it's like you develop that relationship with a client and you get access to, a number of other positions that you can work on as well. Now it's your choice if you want to take those because some of those, but I mean, you can do some volume along with some quality as well. But I mean, it's constantly feeding you. And that's a big part of the reason why I chose that industry. In fact, it kind of just happened, but like, and then I just figured it out along the way. And a lot of them, they'll have like multiple locations too. And so like, hey, you did really well in like Louisiana. Can you help us out in, whatever other state? And so it just kind of keeps growing.
It's important.
Yeah.
That way you can recycle. Same
exactly.
thing here in my industry too. I have access to all of it. So you get to a certain point where it's like, I don't need any new clients. I got enough for that. I need more candidates that I can help out,
Yeah,
but
and
that's
your
the
thing,
hard part, right? I mean, I'm struggling basically finding quality candidates in all sectors. That seems to be the same case for you guys as well.
For me, like that's focus.
Yeah,
big time.
I'm sure. And Patrick, I know, if you want to share your approach.
Yeah, I mean, so I think Vince and I's strategy is similar. My strategy is a little bit more what I would call trigger based. And so essentially the way I would define a sales trigger is an event that is happening within an organization, within our niche, that we know that when that thing happens, it creates an immediate demand for our services. And so depending on what that thing is, usually that paints at least part of a picture of what that client is going through, what they're struggling with. And then from there, we can kind of use those context clues to formulate an attack, right, in a friendly way, to reach out to them and win that business. I agree that trust is definitely probably 1A of the equation of the things that we battle with on a daily basis. Right. But I also think that one of the other things that I see more of in not only in working in my business, but also working in helping other people's recruiting businesses is battling against the phenomenon of commoditization, right? In the mind of the client, right? Them seeing us as just everybody else. They probably have worked with a recruiter at some point, had a negative experience. Mm-hmm. And so really battling that perception in their head and getting an opportunity to demonstrate value, right? To become that trusted partner. I think that is really... to get that shot, right, and not blow it. I think that is, for me, at least in my own business, that is the number one thing that we're trying to solve for on the front end. And then with that, once we do, then comes the trust, right, and then all the other things that we want, from a client. So.
Yeah, it's competitive. It's very competitive what we do. There's a lot of recruiters. We're not the only one. These guys are getting hit up every single day, all day. So you got to stand out, and that's where I say like the conviction and how you position yourself, how you come across. You can't tell me that I am not the perfect partner for you, period. I mean, it's ridiculous. I've been recruiting for over a decade and a half. And I've been running my business for the last 5 years with this focus. I'm the guy that I can fill your position. I'm going to do right by you. So knowing that, like, you can't tell me otherwise, period.
Yeah.
Yeah. To give some sort of like sports analogy, sometimes it feels like we're like having to either bat 1,000 or to shoot a 100% free throw from the free throw line, and it kind of sometimes feels it's kind of an unfair advantage that we are set into when we're walking into these sort of circumstances with the clients that we're potentially trying to gain their trust from. So it's like already a steep hill. But I think the most important thing is that, and this is why I always think with the long-term vision in mind, is that if you kind of build the business in a way that it reflects and poise like the authority of what you want to build down the road, and they see that, I think it makes it easier to win that trust. Because one of the biggest things I started investing to in my business to gain that trust was like not just other than doing podcasting, was get Google reviews. We got like 186 Google reviews. Get the features, been featured on Forbes. So when you start putting those things, like, you know, when you're talking about like the NPCs, the hooks, like those are the hooks we throw on like the calls, on the emails, for them to be like, wait a second, what is it that you're doing again? You're there. And that instantly kind of builds that credibility. And I think that's where sometimes the recruiters or the companies drop the ball or miss the mark, is being able to think ahead and just being able to say, hey, you know what, let me spend a little money here because down the road it's going to make sense when you're able to technically brag about it.
I agree. I think you're totally right. And I think there's actually multiple layers to that, right? So like on the front end is kind of that nurture, right? Where you're moving them from, you know, a cold bucket to a warm bucket in terms of your audience, to get that shot, to get that opportunity to talk to them and try to win that business. And then I think the next level, like the next gear, if you will, to that is, okay, now I got the business. How do I keep this business and actually turn this into, you know, and even in some retained search, it doesn't go the way you plan. And of course on contingent, right? That's kind of the risk there. But
What's that?
The phone is ringing.
Oh, okay.
I can hear it through the...
Oh, mine's off.
Yeah. Could be mine. Yeah, it's mine. My bad.
Okay, cool.
The vibrations.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
Thank you,
That's
because
cool.
I wouldn't have even noticed that.
All right. Phone's on the
Like,
floor.
you're so mic, like,
Keep the mics
Right
close.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Close.
sorry. It's like,
See
it's
you
okay.
up.
Yeah.
I know it's kind of, you get lost in the conversation.
and as you guys need it, or if you need mine,
Oh,
feel
got it.
free to grab.
If
or
I-
just let me know.
That way when you're talking.
Okay, right. Look at you guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
If I could add another thing too, because thinking as this unfolds a little bit more, I talk with recruiters internally all the time, and like one of the things that comes up is that most agencies, I don't know if most is the right word, but many agencies present candidates that don't even hit the fucking goalpost.
I was
They're
just
way
about to
off.
say that. Yeah, that's like the biggest challenge, is like they've had so many bad experiences
Correct.
that it makes it difficult for you to come in and show that you're like legitimate. But to Jace's point, that's why having all that credibility makes it look better.
And you know what it is too, because I work for bigger agencies. You know, I work for Robert Half, and then I work for a local agency here that became big. And the one thing is that they become very transactional, and it's a number game, right?
Yeah.
And if you could at least be very unique and create an experience for the client that's going to be tailor made to them, I think that's how you gain credibility, and then that's how you unlock potential positions within that company, and that's how you gain trust. To Patrick's point.
Totally. And you know, where I was going with that is kind of once you do win the business, okay, how do we then continue to reaffirm the client that they made the right decision in working with us, right? Because just because they signed a piece of paper or shot you over, you know, $5,000 as a retainer, there's still in their mind a level of apprehension because you still have not delivered the thing yet that they're looking for, right? And so to be able to, once you're in the door and have that connection, that agreement in place, the way that I like to do it is we literally just start adding value. We give them the answers that they're looking for, even though we might not have the candidates in our back pocket right now. But the one thing that I love about recruiting that I think creates awesome opportunities for folks like us that operate in the space that want to operate at a higher level and do things that are not as transactional, right? I think it creates a massive opportunity, but it also is a risk, and I'll mention this in just a second. You see this in the UK market in terms of commoditization, but you know, where the thing is that HR folks, hiring managers, they don't know what they're doing, right? They don't understand the labor markets that they're in and that they're competing in. They don't know how to talk to candidates. They don't know how to market opportunities to candidates. And they don't even realize a lot of the things that they're doing internally that are causing them to lose out on candidates and opportunities that can really transform their business. And so
true.
I'm constantly looking for opportunities with clients, like on their JD, like, is this the right job title? Like I'm reading your scope and I'm listening to what you're saying and I'm looking at this job title and
doesn't connect.
You're not getting these candidates because those candidates want to be called this and you're calling them that, right? You know, those little obvious things are like salary band readjustments, and those are harder battles to fight. But those are things where you can come in and say, hey, listen, you know, I can definitely help you, but here's some like quick opportunities for improvement that I think doesn't cost you anything. It's something that I can actually do for you on your behalf just to test and see if it works. And if you give me that permission, let me do my thing and deliver the results that you're looking for. And then boom, we haven't made a placement, but you're already coming in, you're taking the bull by the horns, and you're driving the results that they're looking for. And I think that at the end of the day, that's what a lot of our clients, whether you're fortunate enough to work with a hiring manager directly or an owner or even an HR person, is they're really looking for, if they're willing to work with someone like us, with an organization like ours, and pay the fees that we charge, then they really are looking for you to come in and take the lead to a certain extent. And that's a fine line that we have to walk as well, because we don't want to cross it and start telling them how to run their business either. But you know, there are constantly opportunities for us to come in there and turn it from a transactional relationship to something that is a long-term
a strategic partnership.
Yeah, exactly. Another little like tidbit, an opportunity that we see often that I just love to kind of bang the drum on is when you're doing whatever your discovery process is with your client. One of the things, obviously we want to know about the role and what they're looking for and blah, blah, blah. But one of the things that I love to ask them and I want to hear from them is, why do you think this is an awesome opportunity? Why would rockstar candidate want to come and make a move to your organization? And it's awesome because I need that information, right, to go and market this opportunity appropriately. But it also gives me an indication of how wrapped in and dialed in they are to what they're doing and what they're having us do. And oftentimes they're not, right? Oftentimes you ask that question, what's awesome about this job? And it's kind of like, I don't know. Yeah. And so that's an opportunity for you to then come in and say, no problem, I got you. So then you start facilitating a conversation with them to help them give you the answers that you need to go in the. So tell me about what's the strategy for this year? Like, well, we're, entering this market and we hired this new VP and they're bringing in this tools and we just won this contract and I'm like, cool. So can I just give it back to you? And then boom, you create this little elevator pitch for them and so by doing that, walking them through that, it really just kind of solidifies everything that they've been led to believe up to this point, that you are the truth, right? That you're going to deliver what they're looking for.
So what you're saying is, because one of the things that I do, my approach is I try to guide my client exactly
Absolutely.
that. And one of the things that I ask is, what's your culture? What are your values as well? How's leadership? Are you into micromanagement? Are you into macro management? Right. Like, these are intangibles that sometimes recruiters don't ask. And one of the problems that recruiters have, I think, especially the transactional ones, is they don't really, they approach it as a recruiter, not as a business consultant. Yeah. And I think one of the things that you have to do in order to be successful is you have to approach it and understand the business and know exactly what they're doing, and then ask the right questions. Absolutely. That, to your point, that will lead to the answers. Because a lot of times clients don't know the labor market, right? The labor market, how often does it change, especially today, in terms of comp, people not wanting to work, right?
Just to be able to talk to somebody, right? Get the right info, like the right, do I get them on email? Do I DM on LinkedIn? Like, exactly. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. So how often does it feel like to the clients that we're trying to serve, they feel like they either been misled or feel very transactional from their user end experience from the recruitment firms they've worked with, because they're just being another number. And I've seen it happen before where you have these recruiting firms that have over 300, 400 job openings on their website. And I'm not going to say any names, but what I am going to say is that I see that I know people that get candidates from them, and it's like they miss the mark completely with what they're trying to get, because either they didn't take the time, like you guys are saying, to be a business consultant, because all they were thinking about was just being transactional. Right. And when you're doing that sort of business, that ends up ruining it for guys like us who are trying to do the right thing, do the right steps, follow the procedure, and then we got to then shoot 1,000 to make sure we could work out with every client.
And that's something, I'll be honest with you, I kind of hinted at this a minute ago. That's something that actually keeps me up at night about our industry, because. And we've seen this in the UK market. The UK recruiting market is completely commoditized. Yeah. I don't care how awesome you are.
After living there, I know. I live there. I know.
A good fee is 10% in the UK.
Yeah, I heard about that.
That is a solid fee in the UK.
Yeah.
The reason is exactly for what he's talking about.
Or they do business here because of that. Yeah.
That was mainly the reason I decided not to open shop there, was when I heard that, I said, I'm not going to work twice as hard to get paid twice as less.
They don't care. Like, it's gone too far, right? It's become too transactional. They've heard it, they've seen it, and it just doesn't matter. And so I do believe I do believe that while I see it as an advantage for higher operators and performers in the industry, that if we're not careful, that the U.S. market could at some point turn to that as well, right? And so I think that that's something that we have to kind of be cognizant of. I'll give one more thing that, like, if you're new listening to this and you're like, okay, like I'm a transactional recruiter and I need to step my game up. I've already given you two things right there: job description titles that you can be on the lookout for to offer suggestions. Even if they kick it back, you've at least demonstrated that you're dialed in. We've talked about the tell me why your opportunity is awesome. And then the third one is sometimes you'll find this usually in younger companies and startups as well, where it seems like they're unclear on exactly what they need. Like, oh, I need this territory manager. Oh, wait, no. A week later, we're changing this to, customer service, whatever.
Yeah.
That's a symptom of an organization who doesn't really understand the needs of their business and how an asset, right, a resource, a human resource can actually deliver that. I'm not going to go through the training now, but research a tool called SIPOC, SIPOC. There's a gazillion YouTube videos on it. Learn that tool and use that to facilitate a conversation with your client to help them understand what their needs are from a workforce standpoint to deliver the results that they're trying to search for in their business.
One thing I would like to add on to from what you were saying is also specialize in what you're offering, because we see it so many times recruiters just open the floodgates for every possible position,
Right.
and then next thing you know, they can fulfill. I've been on calls with so many hiring managers and sales managers to combine, and I love these calls. I don't know about y'all, but I love having a sales manager, director, or the hiring manager on a call, because this is my opportunity to show that director or manager that the person he has in that position is not the person qualified to be finding that position. And I simply ask what I know I'm specialized, and I'll simply ask the question of, so tell me, what's the deal size of what you're working with? And they'll always ask the same question: what's the deal size? Well, you're recruiting for this role. Shouldn't you know the deal size? And that right there reflects poorly on her, but it also tells the manager that the person he has in that position is not qualified or suited for that. So specialize in that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
Yeah, no. One thing I was just going to add is like I think you notice a pivotal point when you do gain the client's trust, because they start coming to you and they'll ask you questions about, hey, like, what do you feel like is a fair, like salary for this role? Or they'll ask you like different job descriptions and stuff like that. And that's always really cool to see, like, once you build that relationship and now I know I flipped it and they actually trust me. So I don't know.
Makes a lot. No, I was just going to say to your point, anybody that is a transactional recruiter, I had a mentor that I worked with, Robert Half, and he's my business partner now. And he always, cool. Do you guys know what the acronym, the word luck is an acronym. You know that, right?
No.
It stands for laboring under correct knowledge. If you're a recruiter and you labor under correct knowledge, you will make that deal happen, right?
And get lucky, right?
And get lucky,
yeah.
Right? But you create your own luck in this business.
Yep.
You guys know that, right? You
100%.
have to put in the work to create your own luck.
Right.
Sometimes you get lucky enough where it does come back to you, but that's because you've done it multiple times. But if you labor under correct knowledge, you should be very successful doing what you're doing, right?
I'll say sometimes it makes sense to even walk away from a client. So if you can't find out what's in it for the candidate, and there's not a strong enough reason, you're not going to be enthusiastic about filling that position. Maybe you should walk away from it. I mean, right? Because there's another firm or another company that you should probably be focusing your time and attention on.
But they come back.
It
starts Sometimes
there.
They come back. Sometimes they see
And
the
they
value.
do.
They do come
Right.
back.
It's like a game of, it's like playing poker, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of hands you got to fucking throw away. If I get down 7 deuce, I'm throwing that away in the muck. You know what I'm saying? If I got down ace king or pocket aces, let's go.
I'm watching my wallet next
You know
to
what I mean?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Do not play with
I love poker. So I might throw out a lot of poker analogies. I mean, there's a lot that you can relate to life and business and recruiting. But sometimes it just starts there with whether or not you should even take on the assignment,
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, you can really go down in business focusing on the wrong clients, especially ones that aren't like willing to be flexible. When I first started, I wasted a lot of time doing that. Yeah. I learned from it. But I mean, I don't know if you guys did, but I definitely did. But it was
a little bit of a learning
process
curve,
that you learn
from.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I used to take on fees that today won't touch. And you elevate, you move up,
or even clients as well too, right? That you won't even touch today. That you just already know how they operate,
walk
right?
away all the time.
Yeah,
all the time. If it doesn't make sense, all the time.
Absolutely.
Awesome. All right, Jace, I want to go to you on this next one, and then anybody else just jump in whenever you feel. What do you feel like your agency does in the recruiting process that separates you from other agencies in your niche?
Okay, so this is interesting because I came into this world not knowing anything about recruiting other than just finding the person that's suited for the role. But the way I've orchestrated the business was more like a sales agency, right? So you have the sales team that does the sales, you have the fulfillment team that does fulfillment, you have the marketing team, you have the operations team. And from my understanding, from what I've been able to see, is that a lot of recruitment companies, they just kind of like put the recruiter to do the what's called the 360 recruiting, right? Where they do the recruitment and the fulfillment. And nothing wrong with that. That's perfectly fine. But I often realize that if you were to have someone doing both all these tasks, I just feel like it would slow productivity. So when I just look at how I've been in corporate America running sales teams, training them, everybody's always focused on their department or their function. I said, why don't I just operate my business that way? All my recruiters have to do is just place people, while my BD team just has to generate the lead to an appointment for me to orchestrate them to whether or not if it's going to be a good deal or not. And that way I keep feeding my team. And, Patrick, you brought up a good point last time we spoke about it. It's like, how do you know how many deals or how many orders can one recruiter handle per month? And you gave me a great a system for that, which now I'm like, okay, now I know the number. Now I know how many I need in order to do that. Yeah. I'll let you talk about that, because I think that was a great golden nugget you gave me.
Cool. Yeah. No, I mean, the formula that you're talking about is a formula that I like to use in parallel to assessing other conditions, and I'll kind of talk about that. But yeah, basically what the formula does is it identifies what your net demand is on a monthly basis as a business, right? So basically what we're doing is we're taking the average number of new clients that you bring on a month, and then add that to what I call your house accounts. So clients that you have served on a kind of somewhat normal basis. You want to take the sum of those two and then back out whatever churn you typically see on new business. So if you're working completely retained, this is probably like a nothing for you. But if your business has an element of contingent, then you need to account and back out the churn, right? And so churn, just for definition's sake, would be essentially clients that you've landed that for one reason or another did not result in a placement, right? So whether it's just a dead end role, salary's not right, they ghost, whatever the case may be, fill in the blank. So what we first want to find out is the net demand for your business.
Real quick on churn, like at what point do you decide that this client is like a churn client?
So that's something that you need to define for your business. Traditionally, our sales cycle can go anywhere from 2 to 4 months. So 4 months, to be conservative, is really, if you wanted to just kind of be particular about it, you would say that. But I would say on 95% of the new clients that we get, we know within the first 2 weeks what that client's going to be, and oftentimes even sooner than that. So I'm usually making that call much sooner, just full disclosure in how I run it. But, whatever your average sales cycle is, that's truly where you should, cap that data collection for that metric. But you definitely want to make sure you account for it and back it out, right? So from once you understand the net demand of your business, from there, you want to essentially divide that by the number of accounts you want your recruiters to manage, right? And so to Jace's point, I think you hit the nail on the head. Your job as a business owner, you have many, but one of them is to make sure that the resources, the assets that you have doing the functional things in your business day to day, that their time is optimized doing the things that they bring the most value to doing, right? And so to your point, Jace, to have a recruiter who is dynamic and can build rapport and, make placements and I, for example, don't want them DMing people on LinkedIn or creating candidate market maps or loading campaigns. Like, no, I want all of your time dedicated to screening candidates, marketing the role, like basically selling them on the opportunity, and then managing them from the client side to get them in front of them to ultimately get a deal done, right? And so for me, what I see in my business is on average, anywhere between 7 and 8 clients per recruiter is kind of that sweet spot. Now, I say that with a caveat of, if we get a client who has 20 open roles, or, they have 7 clients that each only average 1 role a month, then we would probably dial that up or down. Typically 10 to 15 roles, if you want to measure it by roles per recruiter, is what we see as a healthy workload, if you will. So knowing that, what you would do is take that net demand and then divide it by whatever that number is. So if it's 8 and you have, 80 new clients, your net demand is 80 a month, well, then you need 10 recruiters minimum, right? Just for the numbers to work. And so for me, Alex Hormozy says there's no such thing as a silver bullet, but a million golden BBs. And I think this is a good example of that. It's an excellent tool that I pay attention to constantly to indicate whether the need for that might be in the mix of things that I need to consider doing. But I would also say it's super, super important as the business owner, as the person kind of driving the ship, to use that as a tool and overlay it with everything else that's going on in your business and then make a decision. There are many times where I look at that number and it tells me that I should hire, 2 or 3 people, but I also know other things that are going on in my business that for one reason or another keep me from pulling that trigger. But over time, sometimes what will happen is over time, I'll maybe hold off and ignore the indicator, if you will, even though I know it's there. I'll continue to kind of blow past that stop sign. But if it continues to be a thing, and then I start to see other pressures in my business and my organization operationally that indicate that we are running thin, then it's like, okay, I feel much more certain about the decision that I'm making and bringing this person in. It's coming from a place of data, right? It's a data-driven decision. And so the possibility of me fucking it up is much less. It's kind of the idea, right? So like, do I get it right all the time? No, but I try to put myself in spots to win as much as possible, and that definitely helps. So
yeah, it's interesting that ever since you shared that golden nugget with me, I now look at my business slightly different because like you said, right, it's an indicator also of how many people you need to hire. So now I know, okay, if I have 15 positions right now open, I know that each one of them is either 2 or 3 recruiters.
Yep.
To be safe, I could have 3. This way right here, each one of them could handle it. And then another golden nugget you mentioned was don't pay attention so much to how many placements you do per month, but start looking at the overall for the year. And that right there, when I started looking at it that way, all of a sudden I started realizing, okay, well, if I technically have that number by the average contract value, now I know that each one of them can easily generate me 6 figures based upon the recruiters that I have.
Yep.
And now I know what's scalable, and which is interesting. I've gone through so many different masterminds, spoken to so many other people, and they have never once ever shared that information with me. And I'm like, is this like a golden nugget and nobody talks about? It's like an unspoken rule that everybody knows other than me because I didn't come from the industry. But now knowing that, I'm like, okay, all of a sudden, and I remember this, like this time last year, I think Vince had heard of my voice. I was like, man, I'm very stressed out. Like I have this issue in my business where we're not placing as fast as we should. And I remember at the time, one of the guys we were talking to was like, oh, recommended Traction. So I started reading Traction from Gino Wickman. I'm like, okay, maybe I don't have the right person in the right seat. That's probably what's happening here. And then I started going through that, started creating more processes, SOPs, and I started getting more of a pulse in my business. And then all of a sudden things just started smoothing out. And then this year has been kind of like a night and day experience from last year to this year. It's just been night and day already just by putting those things in place. So now I'm just eager to be like, okay, now I know the hiring indicator. Let's just see how many we can get before we start adding more people to the mix and seeing, can we have a revenue producer in the business that's going to generate minimum 6 figures in the company.
Right. Yep.
So
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally, when I'm setting quotas for my recruiters, I like to do it on an annual basis, but I do track what I call the velocity of the placements that they're making. So even though I measure them and hold them accountable for an annual goal, which is a minimum of 18 placements per recruiter per year. So that's about 1.5 placements, which is kind of, I think, realistic, at least in our industry. But also I do think that it's important, and I made this mistake, that's why I track this now, is to pay attention to the velocity of how the placements that they're making, right? Maybe they're not happening month in and month out, but I would definitely recommend looking at least like a 6-month rolling average of what their monthly average would be, right? And so you want to see that track between 1 and 2. If it gets below 1, you don't want to wait till the end of the year to find out like, oh shit, Billy, you only made 3 placements this year. Like, I don't think you're a good fit for this organization, right? So like we want to know the answers to the test as fast as possible, and measuring that velocity, and as things begin to kind of trend downward, that coupled with your smell test and perception of what's going on, because there are probably other things in their performance that you've noticed that you can then use to overlay to formulate it. So like, either you get rid of them or you pip them, right? You coach them and try to get them up to speed. That's a game time decision that you make with the person, depending on the situation. But the velocity is definitely important to pay attention to. I do it at 6 months right now, but I've done it as short as 3 months. But 3 months is a little tight. The other thing too is like you want to measure them in a fair way that gives you the answers that you need, but also does it in a way so that you're not over managing them, right? And maybe potentially souring a high performer, even though they might just be going through a lull or whatever the case may be. But, finding that mix is tough. That's kind of the
It's
balancing
very
act.
interesting that I hear this business model, and we've heard it before in our own masterminds as well, because Chris can relate a little bit more. We come from the old school way, and I'm always in the thought process that, at least with my business partners, I call them, and they first start out recruitment, because I feel that if you get the recruitment game and you get the information from the candidate,
Right.
then you can easily transition into an account manager, because it's totally the same information, just on the other side. Remember, our business is two parts. It's B2B, which is us and the client, and then it's B2C, which it's the candidate, if you want to call it, or customer, right? So there's two separate realms of that. But if you're good at one of them, I feel that you can transition pretty well. So in my business model, I have people start recruiting first. I have a 25-year-old business partner named Amy. She's an animal. She's a badass, right? But she's a badass because she started with the recruitment and now is transitioning over and opening up a market in the west coast of Florida.
Oh, fantastic.
And doing very successful doing it. So, but it's interesting to hear the business model of just recruiters recruiting. And my question is, do any of your recruiters ever want to transition over to account management in any way, shape, or form? Or because that is the old school way.
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I've experienced that personally. I think that, we do come from the old school, but the new school, I think, is a much more efficient way of doing it.
Yeah.
Because again, sourcing, I don't do my own sourcing. You know what I mean? I set the process in place that you need to follow, but
Right.
my time should not be spent on that. I need to be talking to people. That's where the most value is for my time, right? I need to be doing things that I can't replicate, right? So anyway, I think that that's a great way of doing it. But the same thing I would come across too when you have recruiters that they what do you do when they want to transition and go full 360? I had the same thing.
Yeah, so it's interesting because here's the way I kind of do it, but you have recruiters out there that if they were to do both, they're gonna want a higher fee, right?
Right,
By nature.
and they should.
And they should, right?
Yeah.
By nature, right? What's the
Right.
average fee if they are doing both, give or take?
It depends on the salary, obviously, right? But anywhere between
Sure.
10 to 50%,
10
depending on
to-
the range that you're at for revenue-wise, is what I've been used to
Right.
growing up in the game.
Fair. So
Yeah.
so the way I see it is that if I can just have them focus on just placement, right? 9 times out of 10 now, I don't know about you guys, but when I was interviewing recruiters to bring recruiters on, everybody said, I just want to place. Nobody wants to BD.
So it's just finding the right person that wants to stay in that lane.
Exactly.
Right. So you're filtering out the ones that might tell you, I want to do 360. But you're focusing on people that are happy.
No one told me that. That's the thing. Nobody told me.
You haven't gotten that yet.
No one told me.
You
they
don't
wanted-
get people that are experienced then.
And
recruiting.
Actually, I have a guy that's with us right now, has over 20 years, ran his own shop, hates BD.
Okay, so there you go. You found somebody who doesn't like it.
Yeah, but even
which a lot of people don't, by the way, I should say.
Yeah.
Most recruiters struggle with that part of their business.
Yeah.
And would rather just do candidates.
Yeah. So in their respect, they just want to focus on the candidates. They just want to go ahead and place. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But that also gives me control now, because now I can control the placement fee that I'm going to give them.
Sure.
And I can say, hey, listen, I could generate you about 5 new contracts every single month. Average contract would be anywhere between 15,000 to 30,000. But at the end of the day, you will do a tier based on how many placements you make per month. We'll go ahead and give you a tier off of that.
It makes sense if you think about it, right? Because on the business development side, it's not just business develop, right? You get the business, that's step one, but you got to manage that account, and that's more of an account manager kind of specialty skill set, and that requires you to have certain attributes that someone who can close, who's a closer, they don't need to have that follow up that you're going to need to have in account management. So just because you're a good account manager doesn't mean you're a good closer, and vice versa, right? Same thing goes on the candidate side. Just because you're good with the candidates, right? You can be a good mentor to them. A lot of it's like psychology. We're therapists in a big way, right? With these candidates. So not everybody has that. Not everybody can do that.
It's interesting. It's really intriguing kind of to hear how everybody's runs their own shop and has different perspectives. I think for me, and the way that I'm set up is, the business development side, I hope none of my clients are listening to this, but to me, the business development side is kind of the easiest part of this business, right? And so I don't when I'm looking to add assets and resources to my company, I'm coveting people who can actually do the delivery side, which is the recruiting. And to your point, the way that I view the actual recruiter role is more of not only recruiter but account manager. So like that type of advisory, consultative, expert approach. That's what I'm expecting my recruiter to be an extension of me, right? Vince and I had this conversation the other day. It's like, if I'm bringing you in, like you're going to need to be pretty damn close to me, right? Because these are the types of things, these are the service and the value that we deliver to our clients. And on the BD side, for me, that's something that is easier to do and requires a lesser skill set, quite frankly. And so I think the way that you kind of, at least what's been my experience and what's worked is, how do you incentivize the person, right? How are they getting paid? Where's the path to, their money, right? And so like our recruiters, there's a very clear path to them making six figures. Like they could actually not even hit the minimum and hit six figures. And so conversely, if they were to come on as just a closer, they wouldn't make that much money. And I'm not willing to, I don't see the value in it.
Right.
You know what I mean? I'd pay them a smaller base and a very small taste on things that get placed that they close.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because 10 years, I've been doing this for 12 years, and 10 years ago, it was harder to find people that would do business development. And remember, the marketplace was different. This was after the 2008 crash, resumes were all over the place. All you had to do was just put a job posting and it would come to you. Today, the way the marketplace is working, posts no longer work. I mean, most of my placements, I have to find them. I have to do pinpoint recruiting now.
Oh yeah, me too.
And now recruiting has become a very finite technical skill, which in 10 years ago was more of an afterthought working for one of these bigger agencies.
I think the sales function, like what actually happens to get someone to sign a contract, I think the heavy lift in that is actually done before the call. I think it's all done in your marketing. You know what I mean? Like the sale, at least in my business, and I see you guys shaking your head, yes, and I'm assuming it's the same for you. But like when I get on sales calls, it's more like I'm taking an order, right? I'm not really, I'm doing very little to convince them that we're the organization that needs to support them. They usually have come pretty close to already making that decision, right?
They reached out to you, I would imagine, in that case.
Well, a lot of our stuff is cold targeted, but we're saying things and we're doing things back and forth once we get some interest to kind of demonstrate and position ourselves very quickly that like, yeah, this shit is gonna work.
So meaning once you get into the call, it's a done deal.
It's not a done deal, but
it's taking the order.
The heavy lifting, I think of what traditionally,
because they know who you are. They come to your website, check you out.
That's it.
Right.
That's it.
See, I do a lot. If I wasn't going to do like the NPC, I'll do like a cold call, right? So they don't know who the fuck I am when I call them. In some cases, you know what I mean. If they haven't already heard of me.
Well, I think that's important. Also, like if you're when you start, we haven't talked about this, but when you start talking about scaling, like those are the things that you really have to think about. Is like, okay, this works, but can I scale it? Right.
Yeah.
Like once you proof a concept your business, you're cash flowing. Cool. All right. Now of this shit that I'm doing, like what can I now do at scale? What can I not? And how do I mismatch from there? I think that, the marketing is obviously very scalable, high leverage point. The recruiters are a high leverage point. The closing is, kind of not to be kind of.
That's the easiest part. I agree with that. It is the easiest part. The hardest part is finding the candidates to fill that role and getting that deal done, or that placement done, I should say.
Well, it's probably especially easy for the way that you do it too, because you already kind of have the candidates in place. One thing I do is kind of like a mix between like I'll reach out and kind of like see who's like at least open to speaking with us and talking, and then I'll send over a redacted resume of the position that we're talking about, and then by the time I get to the call, they're pretty much already closed, and now we're just talking numbers.
Are you not getting the agreement done before that call?
I mean, a lot of times I jump on the call and do the agreement. Like I'll send over a redacted resume once I know somebody's interested,
right?
And then I have the call, and then we close the agreement.
On
that call. Is the way I do it.
Interesting.
Yeah. In my process, we cold call, cold email, SEO, and when we get them on a call, we already know what's the deal size, the person they're looking for.
Sure.
I think I've already shared the script with you, Vincent, on what 7 questions we ask, but we don't sign the contract until I vet them and properly know that they're the one. Because if not, we could have a nightmare client.
Yeah.
But at that point, what I always like to do on a code approach is I always like to tee myself up for another touch point, because I know this game is all about touch points. So I know that if I get someone through a cold call, and boom, we got our first appointment. That's our first touch point. I know on that call, I'm going to give them the pricing. Then I'm going to tee them up, whether if it's 3 days later or a week later for the same time, and just be like, that's going to be another touch point for them to hear me. And then at that point, it's either a yay or a nay. And it's either we close the contract, not, but it's super simple. And then we do an onboarding call with the client and we dive deeper into what their needs and wants are for that role. And it's
makes sense.
Super simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. Let me see who we're going with next. Chris. So I know you mentioned actually in your just now that you don't really do a lot of your own sourcing, but like for your team, like how do you guys source successfully?
Yeah, so how the process. Okay, so a couple things. There's a third-party resource that is significant in my industry. Basically, scrapes the entire web and pulls every attorney profile and every job opening. Right, so it makes it very easy to get started. That's a good starting point. And then, so I should back up for a second. Like sourcing first starts off by obviously knowing your criteria. Yeah. Who am I searching for, right? And again, in my industry, it's very specific. So it can be down to, how far out you are, your JD year, your academics, whether or not you have a 3.5 or above or below GPA. Very specialized. Litigation can come down to subspecialties like construction litigation, products liability. It's just, you can really dig deep. So finding out that, number one, obviously, and then tapping into this resource. Then we fill in the gaps with our database, right, which is always being fed and updated, new candidates coming in every day. And then just doing research on Google and research on LinkedIn, and finding those profiles, putting them in. We use HubSpot for our CRM, and then we just build the list from there, zero down a little bit more. So that's the sourcing. That's a research part. And then do everything we can to get in touch with these people, to everybody. Like, I want no stone left unturned. That's where it starts. There cannot be that one stone that you didn't pick up, that you didn't turn over, could have been the placement. You know what I mean? So I'm very, strong on making sure that I have a list that is extensive and that is full before I get cracking. And then just hitting everybody up. I like to do cold calls, right, when I'm sourcing and I'm reaching out to my candidates. I start there. I can do a much better job of converting them on the phone than I can email. They can ignore my email, ignore my LinkedIn. They're probably just busy when they get it. I'm interrupting them, getting them out of bed. A phone call, however, I got you on the phone. We can talk and it's easier. So, but I'll hit them with every angle that I can.
Yeah, I like that. Do you automate anything for like when you're sourcing? Like,
I hate automation for my particular business.
For your business?
I think it's great for other businesses.
Yeah,
I wish I could do it.
Yeah.
I can't, man. I can't do it for many different reasons. But one of them being that it's just so specific, number one.
Yeah.
There's subspecialties, man. And then the other thing too is if I'm reaching out to a candidate, I don't know what their interests are. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I don't know what they want. So I don't start off by pitching them an opportunity. I find out first and foremost, like, what is it that you would be open to hearing about? How could your situation be improved upon? And then I tailor it from there. So very consultative. I'm asking questions, and then I'll recommend my position or not.
You have to get their story, because then you could throw it back at them if there's any rebuttals later on, right? I think, at least for me, because I mainly work with private equity, so I deal with a lot of funding managers or fund accountants and things like that. My sourcing style is just pinpoint recruiting.
Yeah, that's it.
So it's just literally going to competitors, other private equities, and really understanding how, to your point, recruitment has become now a finite trade and technical skill set. So you're right, there's more value into recruitment now. And it's hard to find good recruiters that understand and get the big picture. As you were saying, it's easier to do business development, but it's just being a technician, I think. And that's where recruitment in the last 10 years has shifted so massively within our industry. It's crazy.
And I've tried the automation thing, obviously, right? In order for me to have an opinion on it, I need to have experienced it. And I tried it. And what happened with me, I did the LinkedIn thing. And I was just, the automation on LinkedIn. And I just connect with everybody I didn't want to connect with.
I'm gonna make a prediction.
Go ahead.
And actually, it's not really a prediction because it's here. AI. So I agree with you. I think the biggest beef that any B2B or even B2C marketer has had, which recruiters are, with any automation is, to your point, the personalization, right? The ability to do that dynamic research on the person that you're reaching out to and say things like, hey, I saw you, posted that thing about Shriners. I volunteered at the whatever event last year at blah, 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 blah. And so I guess what I want to share is that AI has basically solved that problem with automation. It's very new. Most people are not.
Are you talking communication?
Yes.
I'm talking engagement. I don't want to
I'm
engage
talking-
with half of the people that they suggest that I engage with.
Oh, no. Well,
So I don't. There's certain
could leverage
conversations
that.
I don't want to start.
I think maybe
that
you
makes
just
sense.
weren't filtering
So
it down
that's a market
properly.
mapping.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Perhaps,
Yeah, yeah.
perhaps there's a better way,
Yeah.
and you
It's-
can
I think
teach
you
me
just-
what the right way to do it.
Yeah,
is.
yeah.
that's
Well,
actually an easier,
Patrick
that's
can
actually an
touch on
easier
that.
problem to solve for, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah.
But
The gap has
with-
really been like
with LinkedIn, by the way, can I just? Are you talking about specifically LinkedIn, or is there another tool?
any
you're talking
channel,
about?
any
Yeah.
channel,
And
LinkedIn,
any channel.
Because with
email,
LinkedIn, you
text
gotta
message.
rely on them filling out their profile properly. Do you not?
Yeah. Listen, I love LinkedIn. It's great, but just use it more for branding than it is for
Do you
any
not have
automation.
to like this in order for the search to pull the right person? They had to have done a good enough job of filling out
Yeah.
their profile.
Optimizing their profile.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that's what I found. The issue is that not most people don't have their profile filled out the way with the information that I need to grab and filter with.
So if you post
So-
on LinkedIn, like say once a week, or like
I
say
gotta
once,
do
like
that,
let's say
yeah.
if you post on LinkedIn once a week, you're already considered top 10% user.
That's incredible.
Of LinkedIn. So
is that
kinda-
right? Once a week.
Yeah, once a week. So that kind of tells you how active LinkedIn users are on the LinkedIn platform. But that's why I'm saying if you use it for branding, like the way I'm using it,
Right.
then it's completely different ballgame.
I'm a believer in that.
But there are data points that you can still use, even if someone sucks at filling out their LinkedIn profile,
Okay.
which is definitely a thing. There are data points that you can use to then go and do other research that is still going to be relevant for them. So like an example of that would be, okay, well, shit, I see that you work for Exxon. Well, let me go see what's going on in Exxon, at Exxon, at the location that this person is working at. Like, oh shit, they just released this new product. Let me, that's something that I can then go and say, hey, congrats, saw you work at blah, blah, blah. Congrats on the new release, and then whatever insight. And so there are still data points that you can pull from, even if they do have a shitty profile, which a lot of people do. One thing where AI is really kind of out, just really shining. I mean, it's kind of mind blowing, is what you can do with your automation campaigns these days is actually have the AI go and research the person that you're reaching out to and the company or any other data point for that matter. It'll collect all of that information. They went to school here and they did this and they work for this company. This company just had this going on and there's a regulation change that's coming down the pipe that could have impact them. It will do all of that for you and then craft outreach messaging to them, leveraging that information where it has that level of specificity. It'll also do things like draw parallels to the way that they're doing business and the things that they find important and how your business also covets those things and how you can help. I mean, it's really, really insane. So like the messaging and the content of what it's saying, the dynamics of that and how it works is there, but then also to pipe it into different channels outside of just a written text, like a Loom video of yourself saying these things to them, a voicemail recording where you're depositing a voicemail drop in their cell phone, saying very specific things, one of message to that person. It's here, a tool
What's
called
the name of this tool, by the
Clay.
way? Okay, Clay. I'm gonna check that out.
CLAY.com.
But you have to.
Do they write good
incorporate
messages?
Clay within other.
So
Oh,
that's
okay.
like tip of the
Patrick-
iceberg.
Yeah,
is you could
Zapier
go-
it or something into something else.
There's a
Okay.
lot of, but Clay is the best data enrichment
Clay.
tool out there.
I remember talking about Clay exactly a year ago
You use it?
I said Clay over a year ago, and it fell on
Told
deaf
me
ears.
about it probably. I'm
Oh,
sure.
I definitely told
Well, we looked
everybody.
into it, but I don't think we understood quite to the level that like Patrick's talking about how to best utilize the data that you were pulling from Clay. And I think that's the difference is like when it was like before I just saw it as a data thing, right? And like now it's just like we can use like AIs like Patrick is saying to formulate very specific messages and be able to send those out to different channels.
So I'm sure it's Clay with another tool that's being
Exactly.
utilized
Several
because
others.
Exactly.
because Clay, it's just a data. It's scrape, enrich, and validate. That's all
I
Clay
agree.
is.
Yeah.
It will also write copy.
Oh, and writes copy
It'll
now.
Is
write
it good
copy.
Is that
copy?
an okay? Then
It's
that
excellent copy.
Yeah.
It's scary good.
Because you can
copy.
plug AI into Clay.
That's
and
right.
then
Oh,
the
okay.
AI that you
Claude,
plug into Clay,
Opus.
now you
Okay,
can
so
say
there-
that's
okay.
how that's
Okay,
how I was asking
I
about
got
the
to see this.
Yeah.
I find ChatGPT to suck at content for me. I
You
just
gotta
hate
know-
the pitches that they come up with. I'm like, this is fucking garbage, man. Like, I'm not gonna send this out there. I do my own.
It's too
messaging.
robotic sometimes,
Yeah,
right?
there's no personal.
Well, here's the thing, and Patrick, I know you're about to dive into this, but it's just like it's how you knowing how to utilize it
Right.
correctly and
The right
like
prompts.
understanding exactly the right prompts.
Yeah.
And once you have all that, Patrick, you can go ahead
And the
dive
right
into it.
tools.
Yeah,
Yeah, no, I mean, you
it's-
said it, Vince. I mean, it is obviously knowing how to use the tools. And, I was with you, Jace, when Clay first hit the scene, we started using it at a very basic level just to get cell phone numbers. And then just through that, realizing like, whoa, we are just scratching the surface with this tool, and then hiring developers and experts and to come in and consult and build things and like, hey, can it do this? Yes.
Are you
Can it do
getting
that?
cell phone
No.
numbers from that
Yeah.
play?
Oh, yeah.
Better
that-
than Zoom info?
Yeah.
Get the fuck
Yeah,
out of
yes.
here.
And it's not going to be Zoom info
Yeah,
pricing. I'm just
so-
going to throw that
yeah,
out there.
because it uses
Whoa.
four
I'm gonna
different-
start using it for that at least.
Yeah.
It's just it uses
What do you
four
mean?
different it uses 4 or 3 different partners to grab the phone number. So it's not just from this company called like say Zoom Info. It would be from like 2 other options or 3 other options. So it's constantly verifying that the number that you have is pretty accurate, like from Sales QL. I don't know. I forget which other
The
ones.
same
are on.
volume of numbers,
Mimbler,
though?
Datagma.
The Tagma is probably a really good one, but
Are we talking the
pricing-
same volume? Because Zoom Info, they got it on lock.
Well-
they got a lot of
Nah,
stuff.
brother.
This-
I'm telling you
this
right
is-
now,
this
Zoom
is-
Info does not have it on lock
So
anymore.
so
They're
Gray
not-
has it on lock.
The
I
sun
agree.
has set
I agree.
on Zoom
Yeah,
Info.
yeah.
Oh,
There
man,
was
I
a
can't
point
wait
in
to
time.
check this
So
Clay out.
you're absolutely right. There was a point in time where Zoom Info was the edge.
Right.
And it wasn't that long ago.
It wasn't.
Yeah,
that
it
long
wasn't
ago.
For
that
me,
long
Like
it's
2
right
years
now.
ago.
Yeah.
Today, I'm
Yeah.
even still. I
Yeah.
can't wait to check out.
so
Clay.
So let me just kind of paint a picture. This is literally a funnel that we are running in our business. I think Vince just started running in his. Basically, the same cold outreach that's trigger based, omni-channel, with custom written copy generated by AI. Basically, the call to action is offering them a video to kind of explain how we do what we do, right? That's specific to them. And so what happens is the positive reply is, yeah, let me see the video. And so what happens is we have an AI reply engine at this point that is scary good in replying, but will also create a clone of yourself replying back to them that is scripted to the offer that you have.
It's not yourself. It's a.
And
it's
then
like-
with a call to action.
But it is
It
you in
is
the
you,
video.
but it isn't you.
It is you.
But
in
it
the
is
video.
you.
But it is
It's
you.
the Terminator.
But you can't. You can tell that it's.
You're not having to make it, but it is you. No,
It's-
and it looks like you.
It looks
Yeah.
like you. It
I
sounds
saw
like
one
you.
today. I
You're
was on
talking
Twitter
and
scrolling.
everything, right?
It
Yes.
talks.
Wow.
It talks
Yeah,
in your
yeah, yeah.
cadence.
But like,
It says
how
their
good
name.
are
at
we
the
talking?
end, it's a call to action.
But you
to
can
book.
tell that it's a robot or that
No.
it's AI, right?
It's
No.
good, man.
Not
I know the
the
ones
ones
you're
I-
talking about.
I saw one today on Twitter. I was scrolling. I was like, "This is pretty damn good."
Yeah.
but it's not good enough. I
Listen,
just
they're
don't know
about to,
that's
they're
a
about to
fake.
start producing literally Hollywood grade movies.
I can't wait
with
to
just
see this
AI.
stuff.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
going
No
in
actors,
a
like,
crazy
that's
time
where
right
we're
now.
here.
man.
That wouldn't make sense because you hear the phenomenon of deep fakes now, right?
Yeah.
You know,
Yes,
where
yeah.
you'll hear Trump or Biden say
Yeah.
something and it wasn't them or something like
Yeah.
that, right? Yeah. So I
Scary
understand.
times
Yeah,
that
it is
we're
scary
about
times.
to enter.
Hell
into.
of a time to be alive.
Yes.
We all know that we need the AI is coming. We all know that we need to implement it into our businesses. We
That's
just
right.
don't know what the fuck it means and how to do it.
Because it's
in a
scary.
lot of
It's a
cases.
scary notion. Artificial intelligence. I'm not a techie guy. It's
You
like,
don't know exactly the capabilities, how to
Right.
use it. You know, my little nephew's into this sort of stuff, and we geek out on it, and he blows my mind all the time.
But you also have companies out there that just throw out that AI word very loosely without
Yeah, that's
any
the problem.
substance.
Sure.
And
That's the
that's a problem.
I get that.
Because, you know, nowadays,
Yes.
like, it's the
Automation
trend.
doesn't mean it's AI, for example,
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. And a lot
Yeah.
of they're
a lot of
trying
people
to go
get
with
those
that
two
angle.
mixed up, automation
Exactly.
and
Even
AI.
the companies are using that
Right.
as leverage to bring attention to them.
Right.
I want to throw something out there. This is all stuff that Patrick covers in his Millionaire Recruiter.
Oh, thank you, Vince. Yeah.
coaching program.
There you go.
So
Shush.
for anybody that's looking to do all this stuff, Patrick does cover this.
Holler
So
at me.
plug the website real quick.
Hit him
Patrick.
with it.
Is it
MillionaireRecClub.com.
One more time.
MillionaireRecClub.com? So if you're
What you
1-800.
if you are looking to do that, he's the guy to go to.
Check us out on YouTube, LinkedIn. Yeah, appreciate that.
Of course, man. Of course. Cool. All right. Anybody else want to add anything about the sourcing that you feel like is relevant? If not, we can move. But
I'll
go.
drop one thing
Okay.
that's not sourcing related, but is candidate related. That is something that I find incredibly important. And really, at the end of the day, it's kind of one of those like another one of those art of recruiting things, right? Like the unwritten rules that, in my experience, one of the details that sometimes when deals start to go sideways, usually we see it at the offer stage. It's something that you can use to kind of get things back on track with your candidate. And that's really, obviously outside of making sure that they're qualified and all that, one of the things that we really like to do is understand what's motivating them to make a move, right?
Of course. Yeah.
And I really push our recruiters
Yep.
to get them to share something that is not money related.
Mm-hmm.
So I want some sort of
Exactly.
emotional, psychological problem
Yep.
that they're trying to solve for. Those are going to make the most motivated candidates. And beyond that, it often also sometimes, regardless of whether they're a fit or not, it actually also can disqualify them or qualify them
Absolutely.
even more for an opportunity, which further adds the value that our client is looking for. But beyond those obvious things, the other thing that I really love about this is down the road where we have deals fall apart the most is at offer. And I'm assuming that's probably the same for you guys. And usually it's your client coming in and lowball offering what was previously discussed and blah, 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 right? And that pisses people off and things fall apart. One of the reasons, the pain that the candidate is going through and understanding that is that when things do tend to go sideways, you have something that you can then refocus them with to get them back into and seeing the value of the role that you're working on. So like an example would be, the one that we hear the most of is, work-life balance. Like, man, I'm just working, working to death.
That's a buzzword these days.
You still need to go to.
I'm grinding it both
in my industry too.
Oh, well, what does that mean for you at home? Like, what is that doing to you at home? Well, I'm missing soccer games. My wife's pissed. Like, ooh, yeah, how you sleeping? Not good. No. Like, cool. Okay, so this is important. So fast forward to offer comes in, it's $5,000 light.
Mm-hmm.
I have something now that I can go to that candidate with and say, listen, Jace, offer's in, good news, but I do want to kind of just share some details with you and step through this with you a little bit. It's $5,000 less than, what we kind of thought we were going to get. However, you're going to get 10 hours back a week at home with your family. Is it really worth the $5K? Mm-hmm. Nah, you're right. Let's do it. Like, it's going to change my life. And so those are things that if you don't have that little nugget, that tidbit of what's going on with that candidate in that moment, when that client lowball offers, it's a chance of luck for you at that point. Like,
sure.
Well, I hope Jace takes this shitty offer. Like that's my strategy. I just hope he takes it. Those situations, recruiting, one of the things that's frustrating about recruiting is laden with those types of scenarios where there's a million reasons why something can fall apart.
Oh, yeah.
And so at the end of the day, we need client and candidate to come together and get a deal done. And so to be able to facilitate that, knowing that our control in that is very limited, understanding what their true pain is really the value, like the gold
that's
for
number
us,
one.
because that's how we can help them make the right decisions for them and then also for us. Right?
Yeah, that's number one, man. Like, you find out the why, find out the motivation. That's the most important conversation to have with a candidate, period. That tells you whether or not you should also even work with the candidate. And same thing with you, man. If it's money related, it's a red flag. My next thing at that point is ask them whether or not they've had a conversation with their employer about an increase. Let's start there, because what I'm fearful of, if it's money based, a few things, but number one, a counter offer. They're most likely to accept it. Right. And if they're any good enough for your client, they should be getting one. So it's got to be something outside of that for me too. Otherwise, I'm probably not going to work with you. Now, the exception, let me just finish by saying, is if they're underpaid, and sometimes that's the case. If you're underpaid and it's money related, understandable. You've already had the conversation with your employer. You're not getting the 100%. Right. Money matters. It's important. Today's economy, most definitely with inflation the way it is, you got to get that money. So I get it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a hard no for me if someone's just money motivated, because I, as a young professional, before I started my business, that's what I did. I literally, you looked at my resume. I moved like every 3 years because I wanted to make more money. But, do I let it disqualify? No, but it is a red flag
for you and your client,
and the client. Exactly.
So if you're gonna do right by your client too, like that's also somebody that you gotta screen and
you should always be mindful right by your client, because
of course.
Who hates fall offs? You know what I mean? Who hates getting a call 3 or 4 months later? Hey, so Joe Schmo, it's not working, and then you have to refill that. Right?
Fold the hand, like I said earlier. Yeah, throw it in the muck. The deuce 7 hand, the 10 deuce hand. Anyways.
How many of you gentlemen do strategy calls? And what I mean by that is I've implemented this years ago, where before the candidate interviews, I go through a strategy meeting and I tell them about my clients, some of the questions that they're going to ask.
Interview prep.
Did they do the website and interview prep, right? And then I always feel that, to your point, how in account management, Patrick was saying, you have to always keep in touch with your client. I feel that in recruitment, you have to obviously consistently find an excuse to be in touch with your candidate as well. Because at the end of the day, we're dealing with human beings. We're not dealing with products or anything like that. So how do we minimize? I always go into recruitment as, how do I minimize the risk? This is a human being that's probably not telling me the whole entire story, right? But how do I extract by each call? How do I gain value from, and what do I learn from that person?
Yes.
Which, to his point, we can use back during the offer process, right? But so everybody does strategy meetings.
You have
Yeah.
to.
You have to.
You have to. You have to.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
they can say something that is could kill the deal, and if you didn't find out about it, share it with your client, then it didn't move forward. For example, if they have another offer, right, that's pending. If you don't ask about whether or not you're looking at other opportunities, for example, that's another reason like to stay in touch. Like anything new going on your end, I know this is going a little bit further than it should. Anything new, any offers, any interviews, you need to know about all these things because this is what allows you to move the deal forward, and everybody wins when you do that. So anyway, my 2 cents on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, we interview prep. Back to that, that's what I call it.
And I think
do
that's
that.
what makes us very unique then, because working for a bigger agency, they don't really teach that because again, it's very transactional.
Yeah.
So it's not even the prep. You just throw the candidate in there and see if it goes well and then call it a day and then you move on to the next.
You gotta
right?
prep
So-
them. You gotta.
So
tell
I
them
think
about
that's
the
why there's a
client.
huge surge of boutique agencies. I mean, there's some that obviously fail, but ours are obviously succeeding for a reason, and that's just it's client engagement, it's recruitment engagement. We're adding value consistently on both sides, which is cool.
No doubt.
Do you feel like that's what, like you mentioned, fall-offs? Do you feel like those strategy meetings are the main thing that you do to prevent those fall-offs?
Yes,
or?
correct. Because
Okay.
we're in a very volatile time, as Chris was saying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's less and less honest people in today's world. I feel like, right? So, in any way that you can minimize the risk, that'll be great. You were talking about counter offers. I usually have that conversation prior.
Yeah, me too.
I always tell candidates, it's like, okay, they already know you cheated. So if there's
Right.
ever bad times, you're the first one to be let go as well.
Right,
And that
yeah.
usually in my 12 years, that always happens within 6 or 8 months of the person taking the counter offer, they end up getting fired.
Right.
Right.
Yeah,
going
I mean, they basically have bought themselves runway to find your replacement. Like
Correct.
they know that you're out. Right?
You're already
Yeah.
out. You've been talking to people. You've been kissing around a little
Right.
bit,
Yeah.
and now you're coming back. And the dynamics of the relationship change. It all goes back to the beginning of our conversation. That's trust.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Once you break that trust, right, you can
100%.
never really gain it back.
No.
I mean, you could kind of gain it back a little bit, and employers sometimes put up with it. Especially if you remember 2 years ago, it was hard to find people, and companies were just throwing a shitload of money and salary, and
Oh, yeah.
salaries were increasing, and we were like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
2 years ago was great.
Right?
2 years
I
ago.
loved it. It was fantastic.
I was not complaining.
Last year.
I was not complaining
Yeah.
either, but you see more of that happening nowadays as we're transitioning over into AI. And a lot of my clients, because I also deal a little bit on the manufacturing side, and you're probably seen it for yourself.
Yeah.
There's less and less reliance on human capital, and there's more reliance on what we were talking about, artificial intelligence systems, processes.
Right.
Companies are now thinking, okay, how do we not use people anymore, right?
Well, and they're also trying to find just to jump into manufacturing real quick, is like they're looking to try to find people that know how to utilize those things too.
That's right.
It's starting to become qualifications, and if you can present them those types of candidates, which is one of the main things I've started really looking into with my team, it's super valuable to them because that's the direction that they're going in. It's interesting.
Yeah, and I think it's
Yeah.
not just manufacturing, but right, we all deal with various different industries, and maybe even law. You'll see everything's shifting.
Yeah.
I mean, we're seeing it happen,
Yeah.
right? Even within our own industry, it's shifting.
Yeah.
And the way we're doing things right now, we're like, when I hear these guys,
Dinosaurs.
I'm like, damn, I gotta
Old school.
implement AI a little
Yeah.
bit more into my business, right?
Because
So
I mean, while it is scary, it's like you might as well be ahead of it and on top
Yes.
of it as much as possible
Yeah.
because it's coming one way or another.
Whether
so
we
you
like it
might
or
as
not.
well,
That's a
you might as well
fact.
jump in with it.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with
So-
that.
absolutely.
Cool. So Gonzalo, I want to go to you on this next one. You kind of just touched it just now. So if you know, but what is the biggest hurdle that you feel like a recruiting agency has to overcome when speaking with candidates? And why do you think this exists? And what do you guys do to overcome this?
Great. So after COVID, we saw a huge societal shift where now everybody felt entitled, right? And everybody just wants to work from home or work a hybrid position. And right now, in this point in time, what I'm seeing out in the market is that it's shifting back into the employer. Some employers don't realize it. The bigger companies are realizing it, like, oh shit, okay, we're back. It's the
Right.
ball's on our court.
Yeah.
But one of the biggest challenges that I have been faced, at least on the recruitment end, is just getting candidates that are willing to go back and work into the office. Because if you've done your research, productivity does drop. Usually, when you work for a corporation and you work from home, a lot of people don't really pay attention as much, or they're not as productive, right? I don't think everybody's meant to work from home, right? Some people are meant to work from home. They have the discipline. You got to have the discipline for it, but the average person doesn't have it. So those are some of the challenges that I've been encountering as well. And it's just hard to find. And even if you do find quality people, it's the quality people that want to work from home and work the hybrid roles, right? So the way I'm overcoming it is specifically is literally just, again, what we talked about a little bit earlier, and it's just adding that value and educating employees as well too, that there might be hard times ahead and you can't be cocky anymore, right?
Yep.
And but I do see a huge seismic shift from employee-based market, which 2 years ago we're all like, fuck yeah, salaries are getting higher, to now everything is kind of going a little bit back to, I don't know how you guys feel about it, but I do feel that there is a shift of things going back a little bit pre-pandemic. I don't think we'll ever get there 100%, but there is a bit of a shift where employers are saying, yeah, go fuck yourself. Then the other thing that I am seeing is offshoring. So this last year specifically, so many clients of mine are now hiring people that are either expats or I'm Brazilian, half Colombian, and what I'm noticing.
Brasileiro?
Yeah, eu sou brasileiro também. Sim.
Yeah.
Sua esposa é brasileira,
Yeah,
né? Eu escutei isso, right? I was going to talk to you about
Yeah.
that. So, and what I'm seeing, all these countries, like if you look at where Mexico and Colombia and even some of the Central American, like Nicaragua as well too, all these universities are producing people that speak English, better English than a lot of people that live here in Miami right now, right? As well. And they're equipping them with technical skills. Like Mexico has a great program now for engineering and manufacturing. Look at where Tesla is going. Where's Tesla is heading their production plant? In Mexico,
down in
right?
Mexico,
And so you see a shift of a lot of US companies now hiring in Latin America, because these kids number one, they want to work. They don't feel entitled. They do not feel entitled like our country. They actually want to work their asses off. They speak very, very good English and they're technical. So I am also seeing a shift with that to combat the whole, is this work from home? I would be so rich if I could just get like at least $1 every time I hear that, is this work from home? So, but I'm curious to know how you guys are navigating through that space in particular, because I know you're in the lawyer world, so they need to be in the office, right?
No, I mean, they all want the same thing. They want hybrid. They want to work from home, and now you're finding law firms, the bigger ones are getting people to come back to the office. It used to be a 3-day, 2-day split was common, and you had to offer that to be competitive. And a lot of them still have it, but now you got a lot of firms that are going to a 4-day in, 1-day out, right? The challenge that law firms have with that hybrid model, outside of the productivity that you were talking about, is also mentorship. Right. So that's big in this space. If you're an attorney who's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years out, even you get so much by being next to other attorneys that are smart, that are sharp, that are doing it, that you can learn from. Also, just communication wise, right? Open lines of communication, synergy that comes from being in the same. It's advantageous for law firms and most companies to have an in-office presence. It is, but that's not what candidates want. That's not what people want. Going back to what you just said a moment ago, same thing in my industry where it's becoming an employer's game right now. It's back, the ball's back in their court. So they're holding the cards. There's more candidates and opportunities. They can be selective, and they're going to find people that don't have a problem with being in the office.
Yeah, in my industry, it's so funny because again, sales, you just need to obviously close the deal, right? So if it's outside sales, it's considered hybrid. If it's inside sales, they're being very flexible.
That's funny though, right? Outside sales has always been hybrid, then I could say.
Exactly.
Because you're out of the office for the majority of the day.
Exactly. So it's
That's
funny.
kind of funny.
It's super funny. And then the inside sales are like yay or nay. It's either one or the other. But we typically tend to see a lot of people still being very flexible and saying, we come to the office maybe 4 days and then Friday give them a day from home.
Yeah.
So we're not really seeing that much kind of discrepancies when it comes to the candidates.
You can do it.
Yeah, but to Gonzalo's point about the expats, my whole BD team is expats. So, even myself, when I tell people I'm Hispanic, people are like, oh, you don't sound Hispanic because they don't sound the accents, right?
Right.
But everybody on my team on the BD side, they're all expats and they're all killers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different work ethic.
They have the work ethic, but they're also coachable. So if I could train someone to work as hard as me, that's going to be a rare. But if I can coach them on what I know and they could reciprocate that with what we do with their cold calling, then
they get paid very well, right? And when you think about it, I mean, they're doing even though it's less than what you would charge or pay somebody here in the States for where they're at and where their dollar is at. These guys are killing it in many cases.
Exactly, just working from home.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, cool. I take a little bit of a different approach to this. I think that it is a very interesting time. I mean, the data is super clear on this. Wage growth in the United States for the last 18 months has been basically nothing, right? I mean, 5 to 7%, depending on industry and if you're a job stayer or a job hopper. And so I think that it does create an interesting dynamic, and I think it's going to my approach right now is this. Really to kind of lean back and inform both sides of the people that we work with, right? Our clients and candidates. And what I mean by that is make them aware of what the reality is of the market that they're swimming in, and let them make the decision. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One, I don't think that there's a clear winner or loser, right? Like you need to be back in the office camp or the work from home folks. And I think that's going to play out industry to industry, depending on the dynamics and the nuance of each industry. But beyond that, I really try to be mindful to not tell people how to run their business, right? So like, I want to be a consultant. I want to help be a strategist and a resource for them. But I want to make sure that I'm not crossing that line of, hey, let me tell you how to do what you should be doing, right? And I think that over time will sort itself out. And so what we do is, if we have a client who is searching for a candidate profile and we're finding those profiles, but they're all wanting remote work, we'll share that data point with them. Hey, listen, and the key is you have to be very specific and clear with, like, the data needs to be meaningful data. Hey, listen, we spoke to 17 candidates. These were their basic qualifications. This is the feedback that we're hearing from them. We've spoken to 30 others. We've had one person of those 30 that are interested. Here's their profile. I would rank them as a 8 out of 10. Blah blah blah. And so now they have the information and the data to make the decision for themselves. Sometimes we'll have clients after a certain period of time goes on where they were really dug in on, they needed to be in office. But once we continue to kind of present, like, hey, listen, this is what we're like, I hear what you want, but this is what it is, right? So, Tony Robbins has a great saying for this. What is it? Change occurs when the pain of remaining the same is greater than the change that you have to go through, right?
Oh, y'all knew that one by heart.
And I think,
I was the only one I felt left out.
And when I think about this kind of like dynamic that's evolving, I think that really fits well, because I think at some point, depending industry to industry, that dam is going to break, right? Either for the clients or for the candidates, where either the clients are like, hey, listen, like, we can't get the people we need to grow our business, and because they all want to work remote. Yeah. Like, at some point, leaders have to make business decisions and say, am I going to let that beat me or not, right? And candidates, conversely, on the same side. I do think, to both of you guys' points, I think that there are newer solutions that will come out of the woodwork. I think foreign worker program is something that I've personally been working on for the last 2.5 years now, that I think is a real solution for a lot of different industries. Technology will solve a lot of this for us, but that's kind of my approach right now, is just to be kind of a provider and disseminator of legit information, and let those folks make the decisions that they need to make. And for me, it's my job of kind of analyzing as those situations kind of present themselves, of how far do we go with this, right? Have we exhausted all our efforts to the point where there's really nothing more that we can do, and it's unproductive activity that I have my people working on? Or there's still folks out there that we can, convince and blah, 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 blah. But I like to kind of take a little bit more of like a disseminator of information and hands-off approach, instead of like, tell them how to run their business.
I'm not telling my clients what to do. They wouldn't give a shit if I did. They're going to do what they're going to do. And they're going to get what they want. And the candidate's going to get what they want, because there's opportunity there. But that's kind of how it's trending.
The other challenge that I'm also facing as well is, do you guys have any clients that are very old school or think still 20th century, where like, oh, I'm expecting 5 candidates or 6 candidates for this position? And that was because back after the 2008 recession, it was a free for all, and you would get 5 or 6 quality candidates. But today, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to educate my clients and say, if we get 2, we're lucky. If they meet 8 out of the 10 things that you're looking for, we are so lucky. You have no idea, right? So that's one of my biggest challenges as well. Is I always have clients that say, I need to interview 4 people. And I'm like, I don't know if that's going to work.
Well, I think a part of that too is they're also like, sometimes they're working with agencies that aren't that good either. So they're sending them a lot of people that aren't that quality. And so they're just getting a lot of quantity. And you just have to be clear with your clients and like, hey, I'm going to send you like a sniper, approach, as opposed to just like, kind of shooting you whatever. So I agree with you though, because that happens a lot.
To figure that out. Oh, my bad. Yeah. A good question is, what's your hesitation with this candidate? What does this candidate have, that you don't like, or that's preventing you from moving forward with them? And you hit them with that question. I use it all the time when I need to. Thankfully, I don't need to use it all the time, but it comes up, and I hit them with that question, and you get an honest answer. Sometimes they realize, okay. Hopefully they also have another offer, the candidate, so you can use that as leverage to move the deal forward. You know,
Yeah, you almost kind of have to reprogram your client in a lot of ways, especially because I deal with a lot of ultra high net worth individuals that are boomers at this point, and they have that old school mentality where like, I need 5 fund accountants, and I'm like, dude, I don't think that's gonna happen. You know what I mean? I think if I find you one, we're lucky.
And you're doing it right by setting those expectations.
Right,
That's
you
what you
have
do.
to set the expectations as well too.
That.
So that goes back to the point of not being transactional, because if you're transactional, you're just gonna say yes, you're gonna be a yes man, and you're just gonna throw shit and see if it sticks, you know. And that my company, and I think I could speak for all of us, I don't think we work that way for what it seems like. So
yeah. And I think the more you understand your industry and the more you're kind of into it, the better those relationships are going to be too. So
absolutely.
Cool. All right, Gonzalo, this is back to you again one more time. So what are the challenges that your clients face in your niche, and how do you solve these problems? We'll go to everybody else with that too.
My challenge is in my niche in particular, which is private equity, and right now real estate is my forte. You know, REITs, basically companies that develop, construct, and flip to asset management. I'm a nationwide company, but 80% of my business is in Miami. You see what's happening with the interest rates, right? Mm-hmm. Interest rates are basically fucking up the whole entire industry. So there's less hiring. Also, it's an election year as well too. And I don't know if you guys are experiencing this, but budgets are a little tighter than usual. We need to know who our guy is going to be and see what set of rules we're going to be playing under, after the election as well. So one of the challenges that I'm facing is exactly that. And I think we touched upon it earlier in the conversation where, they want like a fund accountant at 100K. And then I go into the market and it looks like fund accountants are making 120, 125, 130. You go back to the client and they're like, yeah, so we're not going to do that. You know what I mean? So that's one of the biggest challenges that I've been facing for quite a while. And the way to kind of combat that now, what we've been doing is we've been educating the client and telling them like, okay, if that's your budget, then we may just need to get a really badass accountant, and you're going to have to teach them and have the training behind it as well too. It's a little risky sometimes because you have to get to know your client and see if they have the processes and systems and training in place for that to even happen. But to me, that is one of the biggest challenges that we're currently facing, specifically when it comes to technical skills or technical positions like accounting and finance, like a fund accountant, for instance. So I'm curious to know where you guys, what your take is on that, and if you're facing the same challenges that we are in my company.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting in my world of sales, because sales, it's always considered to be a very luxury industry to be a part of, right? But the thing is that in the last, I would say 2 years, we've seen a surge of people applying for sales jobs, because the notion of being a nomad closer, making 6 figures anywhere in the world, it sounds like a luxury to a lot of people, right? Sounds like a luxury appeal. So for us, one of the biggest obstacles we face is we get an influx of so many candidates that's why we talk about the time, like your issue is the candidate, my issue is the business development.
We always have a different problem.
It's a completely different problem, because we just get an influx of so many people applying, but then it's distinguishing the good ones from the mediocre ones from the bad ones. And that it kind of, we got it, like, again, that's why I'm grateful that I went through over a decade of going through sales myself, understanding, working for Grant Cardone, being a top producer for a Fortune 500 company, because I know exactly what to look for. So when we bring in our recruiters, we need them to know, do they know it to the pedigree that I know sales, right? Maybe not, but do they know how to distinguish a great talent from a mediocre talent from a terrible talent? And therefore, now we're able to present it to the client. So for us, that's always been the biggest issue in the last 2 years. And I only see that being the case as it goes. But for us, how we're trying to basically combat that is we're trying to, send them over to our referral partners who offer really good training, sales training, or who offer, good insight on how we can help them, nurture them down the road. Because for us, a lot of our clients most of the clients we serve right now, they're not, I wouldn't say they're baby boomers. They're more, I would say my age, or maybe in their 40s or 50s. So they're looking for that first person, or they're looking for multiple people that have that killer mentality, that they want to be able to come in and just knock it out of the park right instantly. Like, for example, we had a closer that we placed for one of our clients, and in his first month, the guy did 120,000 cash collected in his first month, right? Like, and we have multiple stories like that for our clients, but we need to be able to distinguish the really good ones from the mediocre ones from the bad ones. So that's kind of how we've been kind of nurturing, creating great relationships with sales communities out there who just send us candidates. And we also give them a piece of that pie too, just as a good faith to be in good relationships with them. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Anyone else? That's a question anybody can take. Patrick, what about you?
Yeah, I mean, so the markets that we serve, I think some of the biggest challenges that, I see with my clients that they're battling with is, really kind of comes down to just a bandwidth
I was going to
issue.
say that for
like
my
really,
clients.
like really a bandwidth and an understanding of how to do this at a high level in a competitive candidate market. I think those are, when I think across the landscape of the clients that we do have, okay, what problem are we solving for them? That those are the two that I think that I'm ringing the bell the most for on. I think that, I think the other thing too is that, more in the know-how is recruiting, and we've kind of hit on this a little bit. Recruiting has evolved so much. Like you need to have the soft skills, the know-how, the art of recruiting to do this at a high level. But also coupled with that these days is knowing how to navigate the tech landscape and how to utilize the tools and, all of that. And so when you look at organizations, and even ones that have their own internal TA department or recruiting assets, they don't really understand or care to understand, right, how to do this at a high level. And, for smaller companies, it's because the frequency that they hire, they don't have a constant need. For bigger companies, and I hate to paint with a broad brush, but I think that, God, I'm probably going to get hate mail for saying this, but it's been my experience that the majority of folks in talent acquisition, not only running my own business and working with those folks as counterparts, but also as being a leader within a very large organization prior to launching my own business, those folks tend to be the low performers in the company. Like, I'll just go ahead and say it. Not all of them. Just hear me, y'all. I know there's some really great TA folks out there, but there are a lot of folks that are not high performers, what I would consider high performers. And so I think as a result, the value that those internal departments deliver to their organizations is subpar. That's oftentimes why you see they're the first to get cut out, and why a value proposition like the one that we bring to the market oftentimes makes sense. But I think beyond that, I say all that to say this. I think beyond that, the real thing is that most companies don't consider it a core competency to learn how to hire, right? That's not something that they consider as in their ball of wax. Now, this is not self-serving. This actually works against us. It would be in their best interest to really dial that in, because your people make your company. But I think that at the core of it, if we think about the root cause, I think that is the root cause that we're solving for. And so, I think that those are the two issues that we tend to resolve for the folks that we work with.
Mine is similar to yours. Like, my clients in the manufacturing industry, a lot of times it's just like they're looking for like a very specific type of person with a certain, skill set or whatever. And maybe they're even in like a rural area where like not many other competitors are, and they don't know exactly, like, they don't have the same skill set that my team has to be able to like reach out to the competitors, be able to talk about this deal and also recognize it as a good deal, or knowing how to adjust the deal or the offer if it's not a good offer for them. And so a lot of times we'll have to talk them through to a lot of what we've been talking about today is like, is the offer itself even good enough for a candidate of this caliber to want to accept? So that's usually like the first conversation. And then from there, knowing how to we have the bandwidth to actually go out, reach out to all these people, use all the, whatever resources that we have available to be able to find these people, and then eventually come down to a price point that's going to be fair for them to work together. So, yeah, I agree.
My problem's similar too, where they're looking for a very specific individual. We call them lateral, someone who can lateral and just step in on day one and hit the ground running. These are people that are usually not applying to jobs online, and that's where I come in. That's where
the best candidates don't apply. Yeah, usually.
And that's why we're able to solve that problem that they have of expanding their reach and reach out to people they otherwise could not have gotten. Period. You know what I mean? And those are the people that they want, and that's a challenge, especially in my industry too, where. Compensation is, we have what's known as lockstep compensation in a lot of these big law firms, meaning that it's public information, what these attorneys make. Here's what you're going to make in year 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on and so forth until you get to year 8 or so. So some of these firms can't compete on compensation. They're just making the same here as they would somewhere else. And then the smaller ones, they struggle. One of their challenges is being able to keep up with the big dogs, what we call AM 100 firms that are lockstep, or what we call cravat scale, where they're at the top of the top tier of the compensation model. So some of the firms that I work with struggle with being able to compete there, and that's a challenge for them.
Yeah. And a point that you made that I want to probably just, reemphasize is like the best candidates, the ones that are really those qualified ones, are like they're usually they're good with their company. They're probably being paid well.
Right.
They've probably been working there for a while. They're not even thinking about another thing. So that's where we come in, is we'll actually go out, reach these people and actually have the right conversations. And to Patrick's point earlier, is find out what are those things that they're not enjoying that they want to see differently. And is our client going to provide that? And if so, perfect. Now it's our opportunity to be able to make this offer.
That's why it's important to find out the selling points from your client. What you had talked about, what we all know is finding out like what's in it for the candidate and trying to pull that, because you need ammunition. You need to believe in that position. You have to be enthusiastic about it in order to pick up the phone and call a candidate who is happy. There's got to be a reason why they're going to want to talk with you. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I think that's a big challenge that these firms have, is tapping into that market.
What's another challenge for me as well, because I tend to work with a lot of process improvement oriented companies. In fact, I rather work with the decision maker as opposed to third party HR or something like that. But one of the difficulties that you tend to find is, to your point, the smaller firms and things like that. Smaller companies don't tend to have the best benefits in the world either.
Right.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of re-educate that client and tell them, hey, now the new norm for vacation is 3 weeks, rather than, that GC that I work with in Miami and Hialeah, I just offering 5 days, you know what I mean? So you're not going to attract quality talent that way. So it's not just on the compensation part where there's a challenge in the marketplace. And I think it's not just in Miami, it's in different places where I'm seeing it. There's a lot of issues with smaller companies trying to understand and get the benefits package. Most companies now offer 100% medical as well, and 50% for the spouse, but if you're a small business owner, how do you afford that, right? So I try to navigate that challenge, and I try to renegotiate certain packages and re-educate my clients as much as possible. But that is a challenge that I've been facing the last 2 years on my end.
Yeah, in my industry, and just to piggyback off of that, perfect example, yesterday or the day before, I had a conversation with not even a small business owner. They're actually a well-known radio company nationwide, and their base pay $40K. That's fair. That's fine. I don't have an issue with that, but their on-target earnings, when on top of commissions on their salary, they're going to be making maybe $90,000, maybe $100,000 for what we like to call a hybrid job. Right, where it's like going out there. So when you're educating those clients and you say, hey, you either got to do two things. You either raise the salary or raise the commissions, because you're not going to find anybody that's going to be interested in that opportunity. And then what happened? 6 months of them trying to figure out why isn't it that nobody's applying for that gig. I come in day one and tell them this is exactly the problem. Obviously, they build already that trust with me, but would I take them on as a potential client? Maybe not, because I know it's going to be harder to sell that opportunity to the client, to the candidates in our pipeline, because it just doesn't match up with anything that they're looking for.
Since you do sales, the big selling point for your candidates, I'd imagine, is the opportunity to make more money.
Yeah.
Right. In mine, it's that's probably the second most important thing that people are looking for, believe it or not. Obviously, you got to pay your bills and you have a lifestyle. You got to meet a certain number. But for me, it's not the money. It's mentorship and development and guidance, or a platform with another firm that can serve them better based on the clientele or book of business they may have, So it's interesting. Like, different industries have different interests or things that are important to them. But I can imagine in sales, it's whoever's can provide more dollars.
That's usually the way it runs. Either you provide more dollars, provide better benefits, or provide a higher salary. Like, we've worked with companies who offer maybe a 120 base, but their on-target earnings is still 150 or 160 because their sales cycles take about a year to close. So it's always a numbers game. So I always, I was talking to Vincent about this. It always depends on how you structure the compensation plan. There's, I think, 4 ways to skin that cat: salary plus commission, commission only, draw plus commission, or you could do a salary until a certain point in time to then do the commission, overrides everything else. So if you know how to work that magic, then you let me find the person, I'll find you the person.
I think whoever's listening to this podcast that just saw recruitment as like, oh, okay, that's it. Now I hope they understand that there's complexity.
It's a real complex.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a real motherfucking business, and it's hard earned, isn't it? It really is. It really is.
We were together not too long ago. We were having a dinner, and I had a client that I was talking to because we were working on a placement, and it went through. But it was funny because at the end they were like, "Remind me what your fee is again," and I was like, 25%. And he goes, "God damn, it must be nice to be a fucking recruiter, huh?" I was like, it doesn't suck,
like,
but don't get it twisted. It has its, it's a roller coaster ride, man. It's stressful.
Yeah. So for whoever's listening to this, like, this shit is complex. So think it through if you do want to be a recruiter, right?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, because it's not real estate. We don't have a product. We're basically creating money out of thin air, and it takes a special person. A little crazy, I think. You have to be a little crazy
probably.
to do this, right? Yeah, in order for you to do this shit. I'm just
And hopefully the HR people understand. HR like, this is what we go through.
understand.
Yeah, we're not making any HR friends on this podcast. I don't think. I'm definitely not. We might be editing that.
It's okay. We might edit that.
Probably wondering why don't we have enough gray hairs right now?
Yeah.
I'm
We're not
starting to
stressed.
look at the chin right here, brother. It's coming in, bro. You can see it coming in.
I'm
hard.
almost 40 and I'm like, all right, where's my gray hairs? I'm surprised.
I'm getting
Crazy.
it.
It's crazy. Okay, let's do this. Let's take a brief pause because I think we just got through the 5 questions. And I gotta go to the bathroom. I don't know about you guys.
Me too.
But yeah, we have some more time if we want to.
Tinkle
But
break.
now's a good time
All
to
right,
take a pause.
Okay.